2 a.m. and she calls me 'cause I'm still awake. Can you help me unravel my latest mistake? Dropped a stitch about 17 rows behind me. There's no way I can pick it up from where I am.
Hello, and welcome to the 7th episode of the Sittin and Knittin podcast. I am your host, Dianna, also known as His Handmaid on Ravelry and on Plurk. You can find the Sittin and Knittin podcast on iTunes and on Blip and on the blog at sittinandknittinpodcast.blogspot.com, and that's where I'll have the show notes when I get to them. Today is Thursday, August 16th, 2012, and thank you so much for joining us. I want to thank everyone who has contacted me privately through Ravelry, through Plurks, through comments on the forums, just everyone who downloads the podcast. If you're watching now, thank you. Thank you so much for being a part of the Sittin and Knittin podcast community. I enjoy sharing with you, and I enjoy even more having you share with me. So let's get into the show. So what's in my hands? Well, I have a few things on the needles this week. I had been kind of knitting monogamously lately, but more and more things have been jumping in my hands and on my needles. So I will just share with you what's going on. First of all, I am knitting. Well, let's talk about what I had started last week. I think what was in my hands last week was, first, spoiler alert, Miss Claire, if you're watching, I would ask that if you want it to be a surprise, this is for the Rebecca Danger swap through the Joni Knits podcast. And so I'm making a monster or a Rebecca Danger pattern for Miss Claire, so on Ravelry. So if you're watching and you don't want to see what I'm making, then you should fast forward probably about 2 minutes. So I don't understand how all that works, but here goes. Anyway, I'm knitting Louie the Love Bot monster, and he is a Rebecca Danger pattern. He's actually, I'm not sure if he's considered a monster or not, but he's a robot, and he's love, and he's lovely, and so this is what I wanted to knit for Miss Claire. So I think last time I started knitting him, I had just his body done and his head, and has started the duplicate stitching. I think that's how far I gotten. So I have one of his arms done, and I did do his little ear bots, and I put his eyes on, and that's how far I've gotten with him. I haven't done more with the duplicate stitching. I wasn't really thrilled about how it was looking. This is my first time doing duplicate stitching, and it looks a little bulky, but then again, it's bulky yarn, so it's not real even looking. Maybe as a whole, it's supposed to be a heart, so maybe as a whole when it gets done it'll look nice, but right now I'm not too happy with him. So let's see, I have not worked on him in quite a while, and I guess I wanted to see, I'm ready to cast on for his legs and his other arm. And I can't believe I don't have anything cast on the needle yet. So I'm not sure if I'm going to have enough yarn. I am using, he is made on size 9 US 9 needles. I'm not sure what the millimeters is for the metric. And I'm using Lamb's Pride bulky, and I don't remember the colorway either. But I'm not sure if I'm going to have enough of this, and so I'm hoping this is all I have left, and I still have another arm to do and legs, and so I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I've been digging through my stash looking for some more, and I thought I had found the same color in the worsted weight, but now that I'm looking at it, it is not the same color. So I'm going to have to keep digging, or I may be going shopping. So that's Louis the Love Bot Monster. And I really want to, I notice I'm saying and a lot, and I'm sorry. I really want to try to remember to give all the stats on the projects that I give, because I noticed on other podcasts, sometimes the podcasters are so natural. I'm not saying this in a negative way, but they think that you've been with them every week and that you know what they're knitting. So I've noticed a couple in particular, they'll say, I'm working on this and I've gotten this far on that. And really they'll say this and that. And they don't tell you what yarn they're working on or what pattern it is. And you may just be catching up. You may be starting in the middle and you may not know. So for those of you who have not been following me, and thank you, welcome to first time viewers. Thank you for giving me a try. And of course, I love the ones that keep coming back. Again, this is Louis the Love Bot, and he is knit out of Lamb's Pride Bulky. And I'm sorry, I don't remember the colorways, but he is knit on US 9 needles, and so that's him. Next on my needles, I'm not sure if I had this. No, I did not have this cast on. I decided on another sweater, and I'm doing the Calligraphy Cardigan by Hannah Feddick. It is a top-down raglan sweater. You do the increases by make one left and make one right, and I haven't really had a lot of experience with those, so I'll be looking forward to doing that. And then I usually really don't like picking up stitches, but she has you pick up the stitches for the button bands and knit them up and down in a rib, and then it has a 7-inch deep ribbed collar. So I think I told you last week that I had placed an order at Knit Picks for the Knit Picks City Tweed, and that came in today. It's in the Larkspur colorway. It didn't come in today, I'm sorry. It came in last week. The Larkspur colorway. And so I cast on for this project. Oh, there's something I wanted to show you before I show you the project. First of all, I'm keeping most of my yarn in my birthday gift. This is a wedge bag that I received. I received a big box of beautiful handmade items and yarn from Nicole, who is Hot Ass Knitter, from the Positively Knitting podcast. And this is one of the bags she sent me. Look at the fabulous lining. And so I'm keeping my yarn in here and some of needles and projects, and she sent it in one of my favorite colors, which she lovingly picked out from the fabric store, and I just love it, love it, love it. So thank you for that, Nicole, and I will be talking a little bit more about some of the other things she sent. But I want to talk about when I first got the yarn. I read a little bit about the yarn on Ravelry before I got it, and I looked at some of the projects, and they looked very, very nice, very beautiful. So I went ahead and ordered it. I kind of wanted a DK weight yarn and something with a little texture, and so that's why I went with the tweed. After I placed the order, I started reading more of how this yarn, though soft and beautiful, does pill a lot. And so that's kind of a little disappointing, but I'll go for it. I really, really, really don't like pills, and I'll talk about that later. So first thing I did, I cast on a gauge swatch. Now at first I was thinking of doing another pattern, and it's a Hannah Feddick pattern, and it's called the Effortless Cardigan. And the gauge called for US 9 needles on the DK weight. And so I started swatching just a little bit with the US 9 needles, and I did not like the fabric at all, and I knew that I did not want a sweater out of this fabric. It's just too loose, and it was something that I didn't like. And this is the first time that I've knit with DK weight. So then I let go of those needles and I did a garter ridge and I swatched with the US 8s. Still not my favorite fabric for a sweater. And so I went down to the US 7s and it was getting more, it was okay, getting a little bit better. And so I went down to the US 6 and I really liked the fabric that I got with it. And then I thought I was going to a US 5, and I'll talk about that in a moment, but it actually was another US 6, but it was a wooden needle. And so I did get a different gauge on there. And I meant to write down what my stitches per inches were. I think right here, these are pretty much the same because of course they're the US 5 and they're pretty much the same, but I can tell this one with the wooden needle is just a little bit tighter, and that's because the stitches weren't moving for me really well. But I think I was getting like 20 stitches per inch, and all of this time of swatching, okay, I knew I did not want a cardigan with this fabric, and so I started looking at other patterns, and then I ended up wanting to swatch for the calligraphy. I had looked at her springtime ribbed cardigan, and I had looked at a couple of other sweaters. So by the time I got down, I had narrowed it down. I knew I was going to do a sweater and DK weight yarn with 22 stitches per inch, and I was getting 20 here. So I cast on with my Haya US 4s, well, after the Pearl Ridge, and I went ahead and swatched, and I got the 22 stitches per inch, and I like the fabric here. I would have been okay with the 20 stitches per inch too on the DK. I really like 20 stitches per inch on worsted weight. That's my favorite fabric for worsted weight. So that's my swatch. That's the best that I will do for swatch. This is 26 stitches, and I probably should have cast on more because really measuring stockinette stitch, there's only 20 stitches stockinette. So when I measured my gauge swatch, I was actually counting in a couple of the garter stitches too. So it probably isn't accurate, super accurate, because I have 20 stitches stockinette, but then I had to take into account my border stitches. So next time I'll probably cast on more, but like I said, that's the best I'm going to do. I'm not washing it and blocking it just because I don't like to swatch. So, but I was excited about the yarn and getting to know the yarn a little bit. So this is what I did. And after I did that, I wanted to talk about another thing that I ordered. Well, I can talk about that in the goodie bag. So after I did that, I went ahead and cast on for my sweater. And it is in my other lovely bag made by Nicole. And I love the flower here. And this is a very roomy bag with a beautiful lavender interior, and it's very deep, and I love it. And thank you very, very much. And so I have cast on the ribbing. I guess I'm only about 2 inches into the ribbing. So this is all I have for the calligraphy cardigan. I am knitting the 42-inch bust size, and that's about it. It's been pretty mindless. I'm not really thrilled with how my stitches look. I have been really analyzing my knitting as I'm just sitting and knitting endless ribbing, and watching how I form the stitches and how I pull the stitches off the needle, and seeing if I can improve on more uniform looking stitches. And the stitches aren't really even or uniform looking to me, and I don't know why. I notice that when I knit, like sometimes if I'm in the middle of knitting, the stitching is pulled this way. I don't know. Hopefully, every knitting project I'm trying to improve. So as I'm sitting here and knitting, knit 2, purl 2, I'm really trying to improve on how I wrap the yarn and how I pull it off the needles, and just wanting to be a better knitter and making a more lovely finished project. So all of that for the calligraphy cardigan. I wanted to say, I didn't get to say, on my last project, on my kaleidoscope vest actually, I had purchased the Haya needles. And when I first got them, I didn't like them. I was trading them off with my Knit Picks options, and the Knit Picks seemed heavier and these seemed a little lighter. And so I was like knitting off of the Knit Picks onto these, and these just seemed like I didn't like them. I just didn't like the feel of them. But when I got the whole project on the Hayas, I really, really like the cable. Is maybe a slightly thinner than the Knit Picks option cable, and not as spaghetti like. It has a little more structure, I think. I like the points on them. They're really no more or less pointy than the Knit Picks options. They are a little more lightweight, but I find that I actually like that. They're lighter, and I didn't think you could get lighter than Knit Picks. So I do think that I like these better. So these are Haya fixed, and in my opinion, I had planned on stocking up on Knit Picks options fixed, because I like the fix better than the or Knit Picks fixed needles. I like those better than, the click ones. But I think that I would probably invest in these. Still, Addy Lace are my favorite needles, but these would probably come in second. So I wanted to comment on that. And there's another Knit Picks needle I'll comment on in the goodie bag. So this episode, or this segment, is going rather long. So that's my calligraphy cardigan. And the other thing that I'm knitting is a hitchhiker. And the reason why I started the hitchhiker, let's see. Oh, with my calligraphy cardigan, I have it listed on Ravelry as my golf sweater. I cast it on Sunday. We were on our way, a 2.5-hour drive to Toledo, and we had a family day with my brother and his children and my dad and stepmother, and we went to a golf range, and it was the first time that I held golf clubs and played golf. And my dad was teaching us how to play, and it was just a really, really enjoyable time. I was not looking forward to it and didn't think I would like it, but I did. And so I have fond memories of that day. And so I remember this sweater as the sweater that I was casting on and knitting on our way to the first time that we played golf. And we'll probably be playing golf more. So that was fun. But I think for some reason, I don't know if I didn't have the pattern or something. Anyway, we were in the car and I had to stop. Oh, I don't think I had the right size needles. I had finished swatching on the calligraphy in the vehicle, but I did not bring my size 4 needles. No, that wasn't it. I don't remember. Anyway, I cast on another project on our way in the vehicle, because I was knitting on the golf sweater too. And that was the Hitchhiker, and it's a pattern by Martina Bim. And I believe it's about $3.90 on Ravelry. And I'm using beautiful birthday yarn that I got from Nicole, and she knows how I was coveting the Vesper yarn, and I actually did those acrylic hat and booties for her A is okay contest, just because I wanted the Vesper and I didn't get it, and it was fine. You enter contests and you don't win. And I never in a million years thought that she would send me Vesper yarn, but she sent it to me. It's the sock yarn, 428 yards of self-striping goodness in the sugar plum colorway. And as you know, I've been trying to do self-striping. I have not done it yet. I was trying to do it with the Felici, and maybe I'll tell you about that later. But this is my self-striping project, and I would think it would be my first. We'll see if I keep going with it. So anyway, thank you so much, Nicole. This was just so very lovely and luxurious and just very generous of you. So I started the hitchhiker, which I know is a favorite pattern of Nicole's, not, but it was something that I've been wanting to knit for a while. And this is how far I've gotten. I think it is turning out beautifully. I love watching the colors change. I'm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, almost 10 points into it. I know there's like 42 points. I don't think that you're getting the color good enough. You're seeing it looks blue, but that blue is actually a purple. It's a purple and then a green and then a darker purple, and I don't think you're really seeing the colors really, really well. But anyway, I'm really enjoying this pattern. And there was a tip on someone else's pattern notes that, because the only thing I didn't like about it is it's an 8-row repeat, but they're short rows. And if I'm talking or something, I'm going to forget, if I'm only knitting a few stitches, to switch my row counter every few rows, and that gets kind of annoying. And so there was a tip from another knitter on her pattern page about how to keep track of the rows using a stitch marker instead of a row counter. I don't know if I'll say it here because I don't want to give away too much of the pattern because it is a free pattern, but I did go ahead and put the tip on my project page, and I did link to the other Ravelry knitter that put the tip up. And so actually your stitch marker moves with every row, so it's easy to keep track of the rows. And if you know the pattern, you'll know what I'm talking about. So I thought that was an ingenious way, and it just helped me so much to enjoy the pattern even more. So that's the Hitchhiker by Martina Bim, and it's on Vesper Yarn. Oh, and I'm using, I believe, US 5s. These are US 5s, and they're on my Knit Picks options, and 16-inch needles. I think the pattern does get pretty long at one point, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to fit all the stitches on this 16-inch, but I like having the shorter needles for the back and forth knitting of a smaller project. So I'm going to try to squeeze as much on here as I can. So that is that. And is that all that's in my hands? I think that is all that's in my hands. Aspirations. Well, what I'm aspiring to, I want to make some fingerless gloves. I was looking at this pattern. It's a free, just a basic pattern on Ravelry. It is called the Fitted Mitts, and it's by, the author is Nina Highland. And they're just plain, I think some kind of rib. I'm not sure if it's 3x1 maybe, rib mitts. I will not sure what yarn I'm going to use. I'm going to use some, I have lots of sock yarn up there. And so I'll have some, since they're pretty plain just for a rib, I'll probably maybe use a self-striping or a hand-dyed or something. But I would like to have some fingerless mitts for the winter time. So I plan on doing those. I wanted to talk about, while I talk about those mitts, that I did make some fingerless mitts, and I think it was last winter. And I made, oh, I can't think of the name of the pattern now. It was a pretty popular pattern, and I'll link to it in the show notes. It was a ribbed pattern, fingerless mitts. I'm sorry, I can't think of the name of it now, but a lot of people were knitting it a couple years ago. And so they were a cabled mitt made out of worsted weight yarn, and I made mine out of Malabrigo worsted. And these mitts have not been too many places. And look at the yarn. Look at how it's, I mean, they've probably been in the closet or something, but look at all the pilling. Uh, I just, they look even worse in person than they do on on the camera. And so I don't have a lint pillar. Maybe I will try that, but I'm very, very disappointed with how the yarn looks. I loved, loved, loved knitting with the Malabrigo. It was beautiful to knit with, but it peeled so bad, and it's got all of these, it catches everything it goes past, and I don't know. And they're, with them being worsted weight, they're a little bulky for what I want. I mean, these will be good for outside, but I need to make a pair of fingerless mitts for while I'm working on the inside. And so I would rather have them out of a sock weight yarn or a lighter weight yarn than the bulky yarn. So these I guess are like a blast from the past. I'm very disappointed with them, with how the yarn turned out. I loved making the cables. I made these on double pointed needles, and the pattern name is at the tip of my tongue. But anyway, I do need to fix a hole that's in them, and so I have a little bit of the Malabrigo left. And you can find this on my project page. I believe it's called Leaping into First or something like that. And so those are those. So I'm going to fix those, and I'm going to use them again, you know, like I said, outside while I'm driving or something. But for inside and working with people and everything, I don't want to use them. And I'm very disappointed. If you know how I can get the pills off, is the knit lint shaver. I'm going to need it for the calligraphy cardigan, obviously. So I hope that works. So that's what I'm aspiring to. I also want to knit the Hyla Brook pattern, which is a new pattern. I don't have it in front of me because I haven't purchased it yet. I'm usually one, I don't stash patterns as much as I acquire yarn, and I know the pattern is there and that I can get it at any time. And so I will probably get it right before, you know, when I get my yarn. I like that they have the yarn requirement. So when my yarn is on its way, then I will purchase the pattern and have it. But it's by Paula from Knitting Pipeline. And she also designed the Piper's Journey, which is still, I'm aspiring to knit and hope to be able to cast that on real soon within the next couple of months. So that's something else I'm aspiring to. I'm also thinking about knitting another February lady sweater, and I'll tell you why. This sweater, I have not gotten the buttons yet. I was hoping to have the buttons on for you all, but the button store is about 40 minutes away, and I just haven't had the time to get the buttons yet. I decided to go ahead and put buttons on it because I tried to close up the buttonholes, and it just did not look right when I closed them up. I guess I don't know how to finish right, and I didn't close them up in a way that made it look like a continuation of the garter stitching. It looked really sloppy, and so I just decided to open them back up, and I just kind of went around the buttonholes a little bit to make them a little more stable. And so I'll have the 3 buttonholes. But the reason why, and I see I have a little mistake here. I think I dropped a stitch there and was trying to fix that and need to work on that. But the reason why I was thinking about knitting it again, I was lovingly told by a fellow Ravelry friend, and she was a friend, and friends tell each other the truth, that it kind of looked like an old lady sweater. I'm not sure why. I like classic sweaters. She said maybe it was the color or what, but I didn't think with the lace pattern that it looked old lady. But anyway, I don't know if you can see, but when it gets buttoned, I didn't realize that the pattern is a no ease pattern, and I like to have a little bit of fullness to my sweaters. Hold on, please. Okay, I'm sorry. As I was saying, it's a negative ease, I guess, and I like to have positive ease. And so just a couple of inches of positive ease, and I don't like the negative ease. I don't like how it fits. And so, and it does, I thought, well, maybe I'll give it to Journey. And that's when I found out that Journey's bust is the same size as mine, so it won't fit her. So I tried it on Justice, and it's actually too big for her. So I'm thinking about knitting another one for myself and either giving it to Justice, even though it's kind of big, she's begging for it, or wearing it with my dresses um, where I have the cape over my dress, and then I would just actually put the vest under here, but that would cover up most of the vest. You would still be able to see the bottom of it, and you would still be able to see the lace panel, but it would really cover up the knitting. But I'm not sure. I didn't realize it was a negative ease pattern, and I like positive ease, so I will look better next time when I look at my pattern. So why am I saying I would knit it again? I'm wondering if it would come out different if I knit a larger size. Would that give me the ease that I needed, or would I need to knit at a looser gauge, at least for the top part? I'm not sure. If you have any suggestions, let me know. I really like the sweater. I'm disappointed that I can't wear it, and disappointed that it really doesn't fit the girls. Disappointed that I see a mistake in it. So, I mean, it was my first sweater garment. I mean, it didn't have sleeves, but first one for me. I've knit tons of children's sweaters. So, I guess it won't be. Megan on Stockinette Zombie said that our first garments would not be heirlooms, and I definitely would say that about my February lady sweater. So I'm aspiring to maybe knit another one. I did enjoy the knit, and I did enjoy the finished product, and I may knit another one out of a different color. Let's see. I'm also wanting to knit more socks. That's another of my aspirations. Now, I took off, last week, I think I showed you socks that I had out of the Felici yarn in the Capricia colorway. And I had changed needles, I believe a couple times. I had to look at the past episode notes. And it was not working for me. I ended up going to Addy needles, and I think they were like a 2.5 millimeter needle, and the fabric was too loose. The ribbing was too loose. I just didn't like it. And I think before that I was on zeros, and I didn't like that because that was too tight. So what I need is 2.25 millimeters, and those, my favorite ones, because I do have them in the Knit Picks options, but I don't like the joins on the Knit Picks options fixed for the sock needle sizes. So my favorite needles would be the Haya, not Haya Sharps. Oh, I can't think of what these are now. But the red cable needles. And so they had these socks, which I think I showed you before. They are out of a hand-dyed sock yarn from Sweet Haven Arts, and it was Lamantha the Great on Etsy, and I don't think her shop is open anymore. And it's 60% superwash merino and 30% bamboo and 10% nylon, and there's 378 yards of this. And so I had started knitting it and wasn't really feeling it, and I had put it away. Well, now I'm feeling it again and really wanting to knit it. So I brought this back downstairs out of my stash box and kind of put it with, when I get to it, I'll knit it again. Um, it's 1x1 rib. I have 7 inches of 2x2 rib. So, you know, I don't know when I'll get to them. I'll probably get to them after I'm done with the monster. Then I'll probably work on them. And so that is another of my aspirations. I have a couple of more, and I will talk about those in the goodie bag. Okay, in my goodie bag. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you very much it was a goodie to open up Plurk, open up Ravelry messages in the forum, and to get all of the birthday wishes. My birthday was August 9th, and I thank everyone for doing that. I got a handmade card in the mail from B-Wing. Her Ravelry name is B-Wing, and I thank you very much for that. And I got like I said, a loving box from Nicole, where she gave me all kinds of goodies, from monster napkins, and I meant to have them here, and I don't have them here because I take them to work every day for lunch, and so they are with my lunch preparation things that say happy birthday. She also made me this was under her needle. She sewed, stitched around, I believe this is felt, and she made a pin cushion, and it's in the shape of a birthday cake. And it is absolutely loving. Just love, love. I just look at it and feel just, I love handmade things, and I love receiving them, and I love giving them, and it's nice to be on the other side of giving. And she gave me those 2 bags and plenty of yarn, and she some Knit Pick Shadow, which is already in my stash basket, but that is, I believe, my first lace yarn. And so I will look forward to working with that. And another yarn with beautiful purple sparkles in it. And I don't think I have it down here. I'll have to show it to you next time. I will be continuing to show it to you. And I'm going to make a monster out of that. So thank you very much for the goodie box, Nicole. I really appreciate it. I also was gifted a couple of patterns. I was gifted Basil, the Boogie Woogie Brontosaurus, and my favorite toy knitter, who is lots of yarn on Ravelry, who is Joni of the Joni Knits podcast. She's my favorite toy knitter, and we're becoming very good friends. I enjoy the time that I spend with her. And so thank you very much for that, Joni. I appreciate it. I was surprised, and I appreciate it. I also received Oswald, the Lucky Monster, and he is by Lauren of the Limb Knit Crochet podcast. And we are friends on Plurk. I don't know her that well, and I thought it was absolutely thoughtful and sweet and darling of her to think about me and to think of gifting me a pattern. So thank you very much, Lauren, for gifting me Oswald the Lucky Monster, and he will be something cute that I can knit up someday. I know a couple of new babies coming, and for my children here. So thank you very much. And I will let you know when I knit him. And then my dear, sweet Tracy, who is Hungry for Yarn on Ravelry and the host of the Let's Talk Knitting podcast. And she sang to me on her podcast for my birthday. Thank you, Tracy. She gifted me with another pattern from my favorite designer, who is Hannah Fettig. And this is the Effortless Cardi, and it was on my wish list. And it is made out of DK weight yarn. It's one of the ones that I was gonna cast on, and then at the last minute I thought it was down between this one, and I had been wanting the calligraphy for months before the Effortless. They were up there neck and neck, so I decided to go ahead and do the calligraphy now. But I will be doing the Effortless, and I would like to thank Tracy very, very much for gifting me this pattern. So those are that's what's in my goodie bag, and that is part of my aspirations. I want to knit more cardigans. I want to knit Basil soon, because the boys right now are in a stage where they're obsessed with dinosaurs. First it was firemen, and now they're obsessed with dinosaurs. So I want to knit. They really, really like the Basil, and I think he will be fun to knit, and I'm very thankful for him. So those are other things I'm aspiring to. I want socks. I want fingerless mitts. I want sweaters, and not really wanting shawls, but then I want to knit them. I want to knit the Piper's Journey just because I have some kind of love affair with it. I don't know. There's something about that pattern that I just love, and I want to knit it. It's not that I'm wanting the shawl, but I want to knit that pattern. And then the My Hope has so many um, sentimental aspects to it that makes me want to cast that on. And then Hyla Brook, I want to cast that on just because of who the designer is. So anyway, I know it's hard to explain, but all of you all are knitters, so you know how I feel. So let's talk about what's on my iPod. I forgot to mention something in the goodie bag. Along with my City Tweed yarn, which I think I got 14 balls of it. It's like 1,700 yards in the Larkspur colorway. I also ordered the new Knit Pick Sunstruck needles, and I was excited to see that they had wooden needles that were just solid plain wood. I love the harmonies, but sometimes knitting on dark yarn with the different color needles can get a little, it makes it difficult to see the stitches with the dark wood and the dark yarn. So I ordered the Sunstruck needles. I was first of all disappointed because I accidentally ordered 16-inch circulars and I wanted 32. That's my go-to length. And so I ordered the 16-inch and I was disappointed about that, but that was my fault. My review on these needles is, and these are the fixed, I don't like them for me. They remind me of clover bamboo needles that you would get. Um, I thought that they would be the laminated finished wood like the harmonies. The harmonies are smooth and shiny, and these seem, to me, they don't seem as they're coated like the harmonies. They seem like more of an unfinished. Now, I believe, as I'm feeling them, I think that they have a little bit of coating to them, but when you're knitting with them, it feels like knitting with any other bamboo needle. So if you don't like knitting with bamboo, which I don't, then you wouldn't like these because these are like knitting with bamboo. I don't know if they were advertised like that. Maybe I didn't read it well. I was just thinking I was getting the smoothness of the beautiful wood of the harmonies in a lighter color, and that's not what I got. So that's my opinion. I know I have a segment called I'm Just Saying where I will give my opinion on reviews of books and different things like that. So this is my opinion on the Sunstruck needles. So on my iPod, first I want to say I love podcasts, just in case you didn't know. I love video podcasts and I love audio podcasts. And I find them very inspiring. I love to see how talented and gifted different knitters are from all walks of life and all different backgrounds. And I just really, really love podcasts and love people, and I love the variety and everything. So I had seen the calligraphy cardigan. First of all, like I said, Hannah is one of my favorite designers anyway. All of her patterns I see, I hear such good things about, and I just love the way her sweater designs look. And I had seen Karen from Round the Twist last year, toward the end of last year, had knit the calligraphy, and I remember her knitting it. She needed a wind sweater, I believe, after she burned her, was it a Fair Isle or Antarja? One of her colorwork sweaters that she spent a lot of time knitting, maybe 9 months to knit, I don't remember. And so I went back to Round the Twist with Karen. If you haven't watched her podcast, it's Round the Twist .blogspot.com, and she's on iTunes. And I went back and I looked at from the time she cast on the calligraphy, and she would talk about it every week. She would say how it was going with her, different things she knitted with it, some things she changed in the pattern. And I went back and watched all of those to pick up tips and tricks and be inspired, and that was really a big help to me. And I've done that before. I've seen The Hitchhiker. That's, I just mentioned that because I'm knitting that now, on many different podcasts. That's pretty much a um it's not really a big knit, but I wanted to knit it because I've seen it on so many podcasts. So I will probably go back and watch if other people. It seems like The Hitchhiker is one that you either knit as you're travel knitting. It's not one that you progressively knit on the podcast, but um, I may go back and look at some podcasts with The Hitchhiker just because it's fun to look at people knitting what you're knitting. So that wasn't really on my list, but I wanted to mention that. One new podcast that I am watching is called Miss Lynn's Knits, MSLINDZ Knits, and she has about 4 episodes. And she knits very beautifully, and I just like her podcast. She's a spinner too. She hasn't shown a whole lot of spinning yet, I don't think, but I think she will. I believe she has a blog that she used to keep up pretty well with lots of pictures, and then she just went ahead and went over into podcasting. So I'm enjoying her. She's a friend on Plurk, and I would like to get to know her better because I believe we only live like 2 hours away from each other. And so, I'm in Cincinnati a lot, every few months, taking my children to the hospital. So hopefully we can meet one day. But anyway, enjoy her podcast. It's Miss Lynn Knits. I've also been listening to, on my audio podcast, is the Knit Picks podcast. And I know I had been listening, I listen to it off and on. First of all, I think Kelly is very sweet. She's an older knitter. I like, she's only 50. She's not old, but I'm saying she's a more experienced knitter, like Paula from the Knitting Pipeline. And I feel like they have such a wealth of information. I like listening to the younger, newer knitters, but I like to listen to the experienced knitters too. And Kelly has a lot of experience, and just because she owns Knit Picks, it's not all about Knit Picks. It's a lot about Knit Picks, some of them. And some of those I skip when they talk about their new lines and different things like that, just because I'm not, maybe not at that time ready to buy more yarn, or I don't want to hear about that. I want to hear about knitting. But she also talks a lot about knitting and the process of knitting and techniques and what she's knitting. And so I've been going through and listening to her and book recommendations and why she recommends them. And I really appreciate her podcast. So that's a Knit Picks podcast, and it's not, you can pick and choose. And her most of her episodes aren't very long. It's not a lot of bells and whistles. It's just Kelly talking. Sometimes she has interviews. I have heard some people say that she talked too slow, but I feel like I talk slow too, and I just feel like she talks really clearly and she enunciates what she says, and I just enjoy that podcast. So I wanted to put that out to you. That's what I've been listening to. I also have started an audiobook. It's called The Outlander, and I have heard about it on a couple of different podcasts. I had picked it up and started listening to it just because I heard about it on a couple of different podcasts, not really knowing what it was about. Now that I know, it's kind of like a time traveler. She travels back. I haven't gotten to the part where the heroine or the main character travels back in time. I'm really not into time travel that much, but I'm going to give it a listen. It's set in the 1940s in Scotland, but I believe she travels back to maybe the 1700s. So I'm going to give it a listen. So I'm only on this too, so I'll let you know how that goes. So that's what's been on my iPod.
Hi, and welcome to Journey's Journey part of the podcast. I'm your host, Journey. So this week, I don't have any new knitting done because I just haven't been knitting this week because the reason why I have not been knitting this week is because I have stockinette stitches boring. So I haven't been doing stockinette stitches week. I don't know why, but Oh yeah, I do, because I think stockinette stitch is boring. So I've been looking for something new to do, and I found something. First, I looked on Ravelry, and I found some that I liked on Ravelry, but they were all too difficult to do. So I went and looked upstairs in my mom's basket, and I found this book. It's called One Ball Accessories: 20 Stylish Designs Made with a Single Skein, Hand, or Spool. It's written by 2 authors. I can't read their names because I don't want to mess them up. But anyway, yes. So I will show you. That is what I want to make. It looks very difficult. That's why I want to do it, because I do not want to do anything easy, and that's the reason why my knitting is becoming so boring. So anyway, yes. So that's what I'm gonna make. But the only problem is, it's made with a chart thingy majig, and I've never knitted with a chart before. So yes. So, and another thing I like, I really, really like this book. It's very nice, and it's like, and it's and the next thing I wanted to make was this. It's so pretty, and it's blue. It's just, look at that, so beautiful. But mostly, I want to make that pink poncho. So the next thing is, when I was looking for my mom's stuff upstairs and looking for a pattern or something, I found this. It's Close to Knit by Never Not Knitting and Hannah Felton. And that's funny, because I didn't know Never Not Knitting had written a book. And I listen to her podcast with my mom all the time. And I really like her podcast. So here's a book by Never Not Knitting. Anyway, I want to make this sweater out of this book. It's a very pretty sweater. In that color. And I mean, like, little design and everything too. It's very pretty. So yes, I want to make that sweater. The next thing is, I wanted to make, let's see. Aha. My mom made this sweater. The twisty, whatever you call it. The kaleidoscopic vests. And I really, really want to make that. But she said she was going to start with something simpler first. So I am going to start with that poncho. And what else have I been doing this week? I have been writing my story. That's why I haven't been knitting, because I kind of want to finish it before the school year. Because I have a friend who likes reading the stuff I write. And she likes, sometimes she likes writing, but not as much as I do. Anyway, so I want to finish it before the school year, which is on September 7th. And today is August 16th. So, yes. And then what else? So I can't wait for school to start. Actually, I can, but I want to be in 7th grade this year. And let's see what else. Oh, and so that's all. Thank you so much for watching Jerry Podcast. Thank you. Bye.
So for our ASL Minute, we're still at the Fiber Festival, and we're still talking to deaf or hard of hearing fellow knitters. And we've introduced ourselves, and we've asked them what they're knitting, and we told them what our names are in past episodes. And so today we are going to ask them where they live. First of all, I wanted to do a little more about knitting terms or things that we knit. I had showed you last week hat and socks and gloves, and you can do the same for mittens. You would do the same sign for gloves, but you would finger spell what you're talking about. As far as sweaters, you can do sweater a couple of ways. You can do sweater like you're pulling down a sweater over your head. That would be like a pull-on sweater. That would be sweater. Or you can do the same sign for coat for sweater, which would be pulling it up on your shoulders. So you would take your hands and you would start back here, and you would just mimic like you're pulling it up over your shoulders, or you're shrugging yourself into your coat. That would be the sign for sweater. How you distinguish that between a sweater and a coat is you would finger you would finger spell, you know, go get my sweater, and you would sign sweater, and then you would finger spell it. Now, if you're talking to a knitter at a Fiber Fest and you want to tell them that you're knitting a sweater, a cardigan, they probably know you're not knitting a coat, but you could finger spell just to clarify, because there are some coats like the Snowbird pattern and the Einstein coat. So there are some coats. So that would be how you would sign sweater. So I hope I didn't go through that too fast. You would take your hands and just kind of mime pulling a sweater down over you for a pullover, or shrugging into a coat. If there's other items that you would like to see the signs for, just let me know. I wanted to show you how to ask someone where do they live. And so you would point to them. And we always said that the question, I don't know if we've always said, but the question word usually comes at the end of the sentence in ASL syntax or grammar. So you would point to them and you would say, you, and then you would ask them where they live. Now, to do live, you would have your L hands. We did L like this. This is the L, the letter L. You have both of your L hands, and you would start at your waist and bring them up. I'm sorry, my camera doesn't seem to be. So you live. That's live. Live. Where? Where? You would squeeze your eyebrows together for where, and you kind of shake your finger, and it's kind of like you're looking on a map or something, and you're kind of find out. That's an easy way to remember that this is a sign for where. So if you want to ask someone from where they're from in ASL, you would say, you live where? And then they will probably finger spell to you where they live. There are signs for different states, not for cities, but states, and they may sign the state and finger spell the city, and then you can do the same with your ASL alphabet that you learned. So that is our ASL minute. Thank you. Well, I hope you have enjoyed the podcast today. I feel like that I have run on and on with a lot of chatter about knitting, but I didn't have a lot of knitting content to show you. So I apologize for that. I think that often happens when you have more than one project going. You have a little bit on each project to show. But thank you very much for tuning in. I guess in the knitting circle today, I wanted to talk about knitting, what knitting does for me. I was asking my husband, I said, okay, I'm getting to the end of the podcast, and what should I talk about for knitting circle? I have so many things on my mind. And one of the things that my husband said, he said, well, talk about the virtue of patience. And I said, yes, because I experienced that this morning. We all know, at least for me, well, as I'm thinking about it now, I would say that I'm a patient knitter. Only thing I'm not patient about is I don't like to gauge swatch. And I know, I try to tell myself, well, I like to knit. So gauge swatching is just knitting. And, but I think I must be not only a process knitter, but a product knitter too, because I just feel like swatching is not giving me a product where really it is. I know it's going to help me get the right size I need, but that's neither here and there. I'm not patient enough to swatch, but I am patient enough that I will rip out. I think I started this calligraphy cardigan once so far, but I will rip out 100, 250, however many stitches I have cast on a few times if something isn't right. And I will have the patience to start it again and work through it until it gets right. And I was not patient like that before I started knitting. I just wasn't. And I think that patience has even spilled over into other areas of my life. So knitting is definitely a win for me and a win for those around me. Like I said, today I experienced something. I was knitting, or I was sewing, and just a plain garment. I think I was making, I don't think, I was making a vest for work to go with my skirts. And I was doing two at a time. You know, you knit, sew a couple parts on one and a couple parts on the other. They were about the same color. And for some reason, one was just not coming out right. And ripping with the seam ripper is not as easy, anybody who sews, as just pulling needles out of knitting. But I was able to patiently endure through that. And I was sitting there thinking, this is not as fun as knitting and ripping. I mean, ripping and knitting isn't fun either, but I don't know. It's still, I know I would not, you know, 10 years ago had the same patience I had to keep ripping that out, except for I'm conditioned to wait patiently, to start over, to work through my knitting. So one of the many, many jewels that I receive from knitting. I want to remind you that we do still have the August share thread open in the group, and that will be open until I record my first episode in January. I know I just recorded like August 3rd, I believe, but I'm trying to stick to at least, now that I'm working, at first it was going to be every 10 days, but now that I'm working, I don't want it to be any longer than 2 weeks. So this is pretty good with getting the podcast out. I probably will not get another podcast out until July, or we're always almost in September, until August 30th. So that thread will be open, and I will close the thread and pull for a winner, which is a $7 downloadable pattern through Ravelry, as my gift to share with you for sharing with all of us. I appreciate all the tips and tricks. It's not just for people who work, but I just want to know how you, in general, whether you work or not, fit knitting into your life. So thank you everyone who has left a comment in that thread. And I also wanted to, my husband reminded me, and then I forgot again, I was going to do a drawing for a 100 member giveaway. We're up to 133 members in our Ravelry group. I think I lost 3 over the few weeks that I had went without podcasting. I'll just attribute it to that. So we're up to 103 members in our Ravelry group. And I think I just came to a mistake. No. And so I would like to do a drawing for that. And so when we get to 200 members, I will just do, I'm thinking that might be a long time and that might be putting too much on you. But I'm going to draw a winner from 1 to 100. So the first 100 members of the Ravelry group, I'm going to draw a winner from there, and I will contact you, and the prize will be a downloadable pattern from Ravelry. And the reason why I do patterns is for a couple of reasons. Number one, I love patterns, and I love buying patterns, but I also feel like, to me at least, they're a luxury because they are, and they're getting a little more pricey on Ravelry. But one of the main reasons is I am not good with mailing things off. It took me forever to get Sock Bunny's socks to her. I was riding around with them in my van for weeks. I think I was riding around with them longer than it took me to knit them. So I'm just not good with mailing things. So my prizes are going to have to be either something that I can send you through a website or something that we can download, at least for right now. So anyway, we will do our 100 member drawing, and please, if you haven't joined the group and you feel so inclined, go ahead and do that. I'm not going to measure my friends by who's on Facebook or who's in my Ravelry group. As a little joke, you know, people kind of measure their popularity or how much people love them by who's on Facebook, and no, I don't do that. But if you feel inclined, I do want to do some more fun things. I'm thinking about having a knit along of some kind come up soon. If you have any suggestions for that, then we can do that. We are finding our rhythm in our home with the school and the working, so that's coming along. And thank you so much for joining us. Take care.
It's so frustrating, I feel I should just slam it down on the table and walk away madly. 'Cause my stitches don't count up and I missed a cable. This yarn's not the size that it says on the label. Now I can't find which repeat I am on. I think I should have a sit.